This week on Munchkin Land, Sam is here to tell us all about GenCon 2019. GenCon 2019 is already done and over with, and I did not go to the show myself, but I ended up spending like $200 without even going to the show. How is that possible? We're going to talk about that this week, and joining me to talk about GenCon 2019 is Samantha Nelson. You know her as Little Sparkle on the Critical Hit podcast. You probably also read all of her fantastic articles that she writes for Escapist Magazine at escapistmagazine.com. Sam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Always fun to be here.
So you were feet on the ground for how many days? 5 days at the convention? 3 days at the convention?
4 days. The convention goes from Thursday to Sunday, though I got in Wednesday night because that's the best time to get in and check into your hotel and get some sleep before the madness really starts.
Now, was there anything like this year at the San Diego Comic-Con? It was the 50th anniversary of Comic-Con. Was there any big things going on for Gen Con this year or not?
Well, the 50th anniversary for Gen Con was last year. So
yeah.
Or maybe it was 2 years ago. You put me on the spot. But, this year was pretty much standard. I mean, it's still sold out as it does pretty much every year. It's still a totally insane experience. There were your usual huge crowds of cosplayers and tons and tons and tons and tons of games releasing or being demoed or, being previewed, and tournaments and nerd-themed burlesque shows. And there's always True Dungeon, where they take Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Colts play, and then they turn it into a literal dungeon where you can, like, this year we got to fight a demon and a mind flayer, among other things.
Very, very cool. And is this also the one that you do as your team RPG?
We do it as a team to some degree. The team RPG sadly didn't happen this year. It was the Pathfinder tournament that got canceled this year. I'm hoping maybe it'll come back next year with Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Well, let's talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition because it landed just this past week, August 1st or whatever it was, that Thursday was. And we've got a couple of copies here at the Major Spoilers HQ. D&D Brian is going through it. I was surprised at how heavy these books were because
they're so big. Like, you could definitely use the player's handbook as a lethal weapon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was like, oh, there's going to be like 3 or 4 books in this. No, there's 2 books. There's the player's guide and then there's the GM guide. And the player's guide is just
well, it's the player's guide in the bestiary.
Yeah, in the bestiary. So it's basically your monster manual combined together.
Exactly.
The other thing that I found really fascinating, because I was wondering what Roll20 was going to do, because Roll20, and I'm really surprised, a lot of people still think that Roll20 is only a Dungeons and Dragons
not even
online
close.
service. And they've got everything on there, and you can cobble it together to fit any system that you want. But also, day of release, Pathfinder 2.0 available on Roll20.net. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, Paizo really wanted to be able to hit the ground running. They also, I haven't seen much about this yet, but they released their rule books early to all their third-party publisher partners so that they can kind of get brewing on creating even more support for the game.
Oh, yeah, I think that's going to be fascinating. Some of the things that are going on with Roll20 right now are very cool. I saw they put in some animated GIFs so that you could have, like, crawling spiders and things on the screen.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I cannot wait to see. I've been very pleased with what I've seen with Starfinder on Roll20. But before we get to the electronic side of Pathfinder 2.0, what are your initial thoughts of the game? Did you get a chance to play it at Gen Con, or have you just been going through the manuals?
I got copies early as well, and was able to play a session on Thursday night. And honestly, I also did a bunch of character creation. Kevin, actually, my husband, ran the game, but I helped make 6 different characters. And I was a huge skeptic of Pathfinder 2 going in. I was like, why is this necessary? The whole Pathfinder really came as a game that was an alternative for people who didn't want to make the switch over to 4th Ed, and now you're asking people to make a switch, and it's like, is this going to go over well? I was pretty impressed. I mean, the game still has some flaws for sure. One of the signature classes of Pathfinder is Alchemist, and I'm still, I think that they've made some changes to it that don't quite work, and I'm not impressed with it relative. I wasn't impressed with it when I played a demo of it at Origins, and I still wasn't impressed with it when I saw it in action here. But otherwise, I really liked it. It almost feels a little bit more like Descent to some degree, in that every character has 3 actions each round. So instead of your move action, swift action, or minor action and standard action, you just have 3 actions, and you can spend them in different ways. So like you can take an action to move, an action to attack, and an action to cast a spell. Now, like some spells cost more than 1 action to do, and like some things like making a nature check to try to identify something costs an action. So there's like a lot of flexibility. So I was like playing a druid, and I found like I had a lot of different options, even at level 2, whereas like I feel like in most level 2 experiences, all you can really do is like cast your cantrip or like make a basic attack.
Yeah. It sounds very cool. I barely had a chance to look through it before Brian was like, nope, I'm going to take it. Nice. And so I know he's pouring through the manual now. We got ours like last week, I want to say.
Yeah.
But just flipping through some of the characters, some of the monsters looked very interesting. And I can't wait to see what the best streamlined parts of the game are and where the big improvements are from the previous version.
Yeah, I like I said, I think that it gives you a lot more choices, especially at low level. I think what I'm most excited about is to try to like, stress test it by playing it at higher levels and see what breaks, what works, what doesn't.
Now, going off of Pathfinder, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of this come out over the next couple of weeks because people are coming back from GenCon, finding a huge box that is going to injure their back. Waiting at their door. But I want to talk about some of the other games and some of the things that I found very, very fascinating. And I wanted to start with the one that I ended up spending money on. The game's not even out. I saw the announcement, and even before I read through what the game was completely, I went ahead and pre-ordered Marvel Champions. Now, Marvel Champions, when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, they have taken one of my favorite games, Arkham Horror, the living card game, which we're playing on our YouTube channel for Munchkin Land. You can find our YouTube channel, by the way, at Major Spoilers Video. But Marvel Champions really kind of looked like initially like just reskinning the Arkham Horror living card game with Marvel superheroes. But my understanding after going through and watching a couple of demos and reading some of the instructions that they have online, that it's more akin to combining the Lord of the Rings and the Ascension? No, what's the cyberpunk game that Fantasy Flight has? But basically combining those two together to create Marvel Champions. Yeah, Netrunner is what I think it is. Yeah. So, but you had a chance to actually play this game, Sam.
Yeah, so I found it, to be honestly very similar to being, say, a customizable Sentinels in the Multiverse that's Marvel themed.
Yeah.
So like, every player plays like a classic Marvel hero. So I was playing like Black Panther, and at the table we also had Iron Man and Spider-Man.
And there's also the Hulk and Captain Marvel are the 2 other characters that come in the base game.
Yeah, it's actually She-Hulk.
She-Hulk, not the Hulk.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
And then, the decks are customizable. We were using pre-built decks just for the purpose of the demo, but you start with like a core set of cards that correspond to your specific hero, and then you also get to like splice in all these other things that are like, more generic cards. So you can have like a helicarrier or allies like Nick Cage, not Nick Cage, Luke Cage or Nick Fury. Both of them were allies.
Although, you could probably have Nick Cage as an ally too.
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting.
Like, that would be, he's just like runs in there as a Hellraiser. But and then much like Sentinels, you're fighting a big villain, and you have to try to reduce him to 0 health before he reduces you to 0 health.
Yeah.
And rather than like an environment, he has schemes,
right.
Which are like things that can cause nasty things to happen to you unless you deal with them.
Which kind of reminded me a little bit of Legendary too.
I never actually played Legendary.
Oh, you ought to try that if you get a chance. It's kind of long and involved. It's a card shuffling game, but they have the Marvel Legendary. I just love that game a lot. But it's the same kind of thing where there are certain things that happen that you're trying to prevent from happening that can be triggered when certain events happen. The one thing that I liked about Marvel Champions, and the thing that really kind of sets it apart from what I've played with Arkham Horror, is the fact that you get to flip back and forth between your superhero identity and your secret identity.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. And like there are different cards you play in either identities, and there are definitely there. So one thing I thought was really funny is that each hero has like an obligation that's shuffled into the action deck. So like as the bad guy is dealing out cards, like some of them are pretty generic. Like it's like I summon like a minion that you now have to deal with. But some of them are like each hero shuffles in some obligation. So like Spider-Man can like get evicted, and you have to go deal with that. Or like Black Panther Panther has to like go back to Wakanda and go be king, and like it means like you have to go change your mode into T'Challa from Black Panther and like go deal with your state issues before you can get back into the fight.
And I think also, too, especially from what I saw in some of the playthroughs that I saw, especially with Iron Man and T'Challa, or Tony Stark and T'Challa, when you're in your public identity mode, you can actually build up your armor or build up your equipment so that when you're ready to trigger it, and I think Wakanda Forever is the trigger for Black Panther,
correct,
where all of your items trigger at the same time and you just unleash a massive attack.
Yeah, exactly. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Iron Man has to like sit there building up his armor before he like is ready to suit up. Whereas like Spider-Man is a lot more easy. Like he'd seem to just be able to like be Spider-Man almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it just looks like a fun game. I told Brad the minute that I saw that it dropped, I was like, guess what we're playing right after Arkham Horror? And he seemed pretty down with it. And the other cool thing is that Marvel Champions, unlike I'm going to just keep referring to Arkham Horror, this one automatically out of the box is playable from 1 to 4 players, and you've got all the cards that you need for 1 to 4 players, unlike Arkham Horror, where you basically had to buy 2 base sets for this. This one, you only have to buy 1.
Yeah, and yet they still got you for $200. So.
Well, yes, because I got all the playmats, because I just thought all the playmats were really cool, too. The base price for this is $59.95, $60 with shipping, comes out in October, and then the way that they're going to have releases on this is every month they're going to release new packs, and in the pack order, I think it's always going to be a hero, a villain, and then a campaign or a scenario. So the first expansion that will come out of this, and these, I don't know if they've announced or I guess it's villain, then hero, then scenario set. But I don't know if they've announced a price on these. I'm going to guess they're going to be about $20 a piece because that's what current expansions are for Arkham Horror. But in October, we get the core set. Then in November, it's the Green Goblin set. December is Captain America Steve Rogers, and you get all the cards that you need to play that. Then in January comes Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. And then in February, we're getting the Wrecking Crew scenario, which should be really kind of cool funny. Too. So is there only the Rhino? Is that the only villain that you fight in the base set?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't know how many villains there were. Again, I was just playing the demo, but when we played the demo, we actually fought Ulysses Claw. Ah,
okay, cool. All right, cool. The only ones that I saw were the Rhino ones, so I was like, I'm hoping there's a couple of other villains that we get a fight in this. So
yeah, definitely.
This is the one that I'm most excited about, just because it seems right up my alley with the card building, the shuffling, and the flavins and everything. The one that I'm kind of mixed on is the one that is coming from Atomic Mass Games. It was also announced at the Fantasy Flight press conference, is Marvel Crisis Protocol. Now, did you get a chance to see this one?
I did not.
This was, to me, from everything that I saw in my Twitter feed and in the social medias and from other people that I was talking about who saw this news, this is the one that most people are super excited about because this is a tactics game with miniatures that you are moving around and fighting, and I guess it may have some Sentinels Tactics types things in here. To me, when I looked at it, and of course, if you're interested in Marvel Crisis Protocol, you can download the complete manual now that tells you how you play the game. But the miniatures are 42. My understanding is that they're 42 millimeter, 42 millimeter sized figures instead of the 28 that you normally have with RPG stuff. You do have to put these figures together. Like you have to put the head on, you have to put the arms and the torso on, and then you have to paint them. So for me, that was kind of automatically kind of a letdown because I was like, oh, I kind of wanted these pre-painted so they looked awesome and not crappy whenever I paint my miniatures.
Yeah, like I'm not a tactical miniatures person, and I know a lot of people, and like that's half the fun is the customizing and the painting, but it is just way more work than I'm ever going to invest in a game.
Have you ever played the X-Wing game, the X-Wing Tactics game that Fantasy Flight has?
I'm honestly not wild about tactical miniatures games in general, and so I did play the X-Wing game, and it just didn't do much for me.
And that is the problem. That's the second problem that I have with Marvel Crisis Protocol is that you do have those measurement tools. So, if, for example, Spider-Man has like an electric taser slinger. And if you want to use that, you then have to pull out the little cardboard strip and measure how far away are you going to be able to hit him or not hit him. And so you've got that. And then there's a little flexible distance marker for movement so that you can move whatever the distance is for each of these characters. But the thing that I like about it is that it actually does have a flexible bend in it so that you can move around corners and everything without having to use like the turn marker or those weird angled ones that you see in the X-Wing game. So that's pretty cool. The other thing, and this is what they showed at the show, was this big 3-foot by 3-foot subway game area that, it's all 3D. It's got pillars and subway cars and all this other stuff. The other thing that's got a lot of people excited about the Marvel Crisis Protocol is it actually has these elements that you can buy. Now, the base set comes with a little Daily Bugle newsstand, so it's got a little building. It's got a garbage can. It's got some lamps. It's got, I think, one car that comes with it, and then you get to buy other things for other scenarios and other events, including, I think, all the way up to that giant 3-foot by 3-foot gaming area for the subway station, which I think is very, very fascinating. Now, they did say that the largest that this would be 3-foot by 3-foot. So I don't think people who are into the Warhammer 40K and are using, a giant 4-foot by 8-foot or 16 by 16-foot plywood tables, I don't think you're going to have to go that far. But the storage of this stuff also kind of turned me away.
Sure. Yeah, it's a big commitment in so many ways.
Yeah, I know people. I talked to Brian Ibbett this week on the morning stream. He said that he might just be buying these just so he can have the miniatures and paint the miniatures and have them on display.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know it's definitely like I've got some friends that are extremely into Kingdom Death Monster, and they play the game. But I swear, like, the biggest appeal is just showing off the minis.
Oh, yeah. And if you ever get a chance to go to Dr. Brad Will's house, he's got those things everywhere because he loves that game and he loves painting the miniatures, and they're all over the place and you just look at them. So that's pretty cool. So Marvel Crisis Protocol, it's coming out through Atomic Mass Games. I don't know what I'm sorry, I keep saying Final Fantasy, what Fantasy Flight Games' connection with this is, if they're going to help with some of the distribution or sell-throughs or whatever. But I guess that will remain to be seen. But we can look for this in the final quarter of 2019. So October, November, December is my guess. The other thing from Fantasy Flight, Arkham Horror related, is the new Arkham Horror Final Hour game, which is this like the first Arkham Horror game that they came out with? Not the, now I'm forgetting the title of the one. It's the one where you're inside the museum.
Oh, I don't know that I ever played that version.
And I'm going to have to look and see. But tell us about Arkham Horror Final Hour.
So the concept of Arkham Final Hour is pretty funny. It's you've lost. You're playing your game of Arkham. You're trying to stop the great old one from showing up, and you failed. So the great old one is here. And basically Arkham is just overrun by cultists and monsters. And this is the last final ditch attempt to save the world. So it's a much faster game than Arkham because really all you're doing is running around fighting things and to some degree investigating, but most of the narrative stuff has been stripped away. And instead it's more of it's a lot less cooperative. It's not that it's competitive, but there are a lot more strict rules about how much you can communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. Basically, everyone has a deck, and they're all your classic Arkham characters. So I was playing Ashcan Pete.
Nice.
So each person has a deck of certain actions you can take, and at the top of the action of the card are aggressive actions where you move and attack a monster or move and pick up some gear. And at the bottom of the card are more passive actions you investigate, and then also almost always something bad happens. You investigate and the monsters activate, or you investigate and you summon some monsters. Oh, okay. And there's basically a little bidding system to see who gets to play what, where you play certain cards that are kind of almost an initiative order. And so if you really want to get to play your active card, you play a low card. And if you really want to and if you don't care, you play a high card, and you'll probably play your passive one. And basically you're just running around a map, trying to beat down as many monsters and grab as many clues as you can before you're overwhelmed. And you lose if any of your investigators die or if your base of operations is destroyed. And there are some monsters that wreck buildings as they go.
Yeah.
So it's very fast-paced, very chaotic. We only got to play 2 rounds in the demo, and then came very close to winning.
Wow, really?
In the end, yeah. Well, because in the end, you turn in all the clues you've gathered and basically attempt to seal away the gate. And again, because like you're not really allowed to communicate, no one really knows what anyone else has in terms of like their ability to help it. So you're just kind of like hoping that you have enough resources to make it work.
Well, but even then, in 2 rounds, you've played a fourth of the game because there's only 8 rounds in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's a much faster paced version than the traditional Arkham Horror. So if you want like something like Arkham flavored, but only have like 45 minutes to play, like it's a good option for you.
The game that I was thinking of was the iOS version of Elder Sign, where you're running around inside Miskatonic Museum. This one, you're just running around the Miskatonic University, trying to close the gate and send the Elder Gods away. Do we know what the release date or anything is on this one?
It released at GenCon, so
okay.
It is out now.
Now, is this something that you're going to pick up? It's like $40.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm actually going to pick it up for $40. I thought it was neat, but I honestly prefer the longer narrative style. Like my favorite of the Arkham games is actually Eldritch Horror, which is like the big globe-spanning one that takes absolutely forever to play. But like I find deeply satisfying. So it's probably not something that I would personally invest in. But if you're one of those people that really likes the flavor of Arkham and can never find like a group committed enough to play for like the 2 to 3 hours that it takes, like that's a good option for you.
I've got all of the Eldritch Horror stuff, and it takes up a lot of space. It takes a lot of time, and so we don't get to play it that often simply because of the length of time that it takes to play that game. Also, Mansions of Madness is a lot of fun. They've got so much cool stuff over at Fantasy Flight. Now, they did announce a bunch of new Star Wars stuff as well, bringing a lot of the, like Bosk's ship is coming over. They're bringing Armada over to the 2.0 system. It looked like this year was a big year for bringing past stuff that people liked into the 2.0 system. And if you're a fan of that game, then by all means, I'm sure you already know about all of that stuff and are ready to suck it up and spend your money to get all new miniatures. Yeah. So let's see if there's one other game that I heard about at the San Diego Comic-Con because I'm pretty sure that's where they first announced it. And I was just like, oh, okay. Funko has got some little pop mini game. It can't be that good. But then everyone I've talked to who played the Funko board game, it's called the DC Funko Universe. They've got a whole bunch of them. They've got DC, they've got Harry Potter, they've got Rick and Morty, and then they've got the Golden Girls of all things.
Yeah, I saw the booth for it. It's funny. They'd reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, we're doing a game. Like, do you want to come over?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I definitely do." And then they never responded to me, so I never actually had a chance to get over there and test it out. But so I really couldn't tell you how it plays, but it definitely looked cool.
Now I know Dan Patras has played it. I know he's going to probably talk about it on an upcoming Top 5 Express, or he may be talking about it on the next Munchkin Minute. I know that Scott is trying to get him on board for this week's the morning stream to do a big GenCon wrap up. But he also responded back to me, and when this came out at San Diego Comic-Con, it's like, okay, it's just a little strategy game using the pop minis, and that's cool, I guess. And then he played it, and he just kept raving me. He kept sending me direct instant messages saying, "Oh man, this game is really a lot more fun than you think it is on the surface. It's super easy to get into. It's good for people who are experienced with strategy games, even for people who are not experienced with strategy games. It's easy to learn, and the launching products, DC, Harry Potter, Rick and Morty, and the Golden Girls, probably enough to attract some people. And best of all, Dan said that there's a lot of other licenses coming that they couldn't talk about because they haven't gotten it all finalized yet for the game. So this is something that Funko Games is really investing heavily in, I think, in 2019 and into 2020 and beyond. So I think a lot of people who love the minis, who love the pop vinyls, are probably going to love the minis as well. And if they can play a game with it, more power to them. So
yeah, for sure.
Yep. Okay. Beyond those games that I'm super excited about or saw a lot of interest in, this fall, I cannot wait, or I guess whenever it launches, is Cyberpunk 2077, the video game.
Yeah, that's coming out in April next year.
In April of next year. So I know that all of my minimal, Social Security IRS refund is probably going to go right to that game, and I'll probably still owe like $40. But I hear that is there a board game version of this that was shown?
Yeah,
at,
it's going to be a card drafting game called Cyberpunk 2077 Afterlife. That was announced at GenCon, and I got to actually interview the one of the lead designers on it.
So what is this game about?
So basically, you're gonna, instead of playing an actual like runner, like most Cyberpunk games are, you're playing a fixer. So you're basically one of the people that hires cyberpunk people and sends them out to do missions and like equips them with weapons and implants and other crazy stuff. And apparently part of it is also looking cool while they do it. He wasn't able to elaborate exactly how that is going to play out, but like
there's going to be a Vogue component of it where you have to
he
stand
said
and
like
pose with your figures.
it's supposed to be like very stylish, and like your main resource that you're trying to collect to win the game is street cred.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, yeah, you're going to be like drafting cyberpunks and gear, and there's going to be like missions that will change every time you play, and you'll send people out to try to complete the missions, and you're going to want to make sure that they survive and they succeed, and they also look awesome doing it. But the other players, and it's going to be 2 to 6 players can play this, are going to be able to interfere with your missions as you're playing it.
Okay, so this is one against many or one against everybody kind of thing.
Oh no, it's fully competitive.
Oh, okay. But is this card shuffling or card building?
It's deck building. So along the lines of like Ascension or
nice,
or even like Seven Wonders, you said.
Do we know when this is coming out and what the price point is on this?
Sometime next year. No price point announced yet. It's going to be following the release of the video game, so they're kind of trying to wait to make sure that the game actually hits in April before they announce anything for this. But they're apparently working very actively with CD Projekt Red, the people who are making the video game, to get the art and get the design aesthetic right.
Very, very cool. Now, you're going to have more on this over at escapistmagazine.com.
Yeah, you can read my full interview with the designer tomorrow on at Escapist.
Okay, so escapistmagazine.com, or if you're listening to this in the future, head over to Escapist Magazine and just look for Cyberpunk 2077. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, you'll also find my essay about how cool Keanu Reeves is and how excited I am that he's going to be in that video game.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. There's something about that game that I just want to. I mean, I'm loving Red Dead Redemption 2 right now. I mean, if there was a game that I've just been so absorbed with, it is that game. But I have a feeling that when 2077 rolls around, I'm just going to drift away and not play any other video games for probably a year, because I'll be so absorbed into going into all the side quests, all the main quests, all the world explorations. And
yeah, I mean, if it's anything like The Witcher, that seems very plausible.
Yeah. Now, before we get into some of the other cool games that you saw, I wanted to just bring up Zombicide 2nd Edition from CMON Games. I was surprised that this came out because they have so many expansions and so many different versions of Zombicide that are out. I finally went and picked up a copy of one of the Zombicides, green something, I don't know what it is, just so I could play it. And then now they're coming out with a 2.0 version of the game, which they said is supposed to be faster. It's supposed to be more engaging. It's supposed to be more new player friendly. So I don't know if you had heard anything about that or what
I saw it. So Simon I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to pronounce that. They're actually the people developing the Cyberpunk game. So I was over at their booth to do that interview. And I wanted to try to get in a Zombicide, and for that matter, God of War was their other new game that weekend. All weekend they were just packed. Like every single table, they were selling out stuff faster than they most of the games that I wanted to get from them just instantly sold out. So they were doing great. The Zombicide looked really cool. I haven't played it, so I couldn't say one way or the other, but there seemed to be a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, and I guess I'm looking at a site that says maybe this is going to be a Kickstarter game. I don't know. So be on the lookout for Zombicide 2nd Edition if you are into that world. And I know that there's a lot of people who love Zombicide, so I did want to mention that. So there were a couple of other games, Sam, that you wanted to talk about. What you got on your plate that you came away with as a cool find at GenCon 2019?
Sure. So yeah, one of the while we're talking about video games, one of the ones I played was actually an indie game by the name of Solasta: Crown of the Magister, and it's an indie game by Tactical Adventures, which is a French company, and they're doing a Kickstarter soon to try to fund it. And what it is an extremely faithful digital adaptation of the rules for D&D 5th Ed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, like down to the fact that like one of the things they're doing to kind of really distinguish themselves from other isometric RPGs is they have like verticality. So, in the demo I played, I was sneaking around a dungeon and I discovered there was like a camp of orcs that might have kidnapped some guy I was trying to save.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm above them and I could do things like push rocks down to like mess with one of the
Oh,
guards
nice.
and like shoot arrows and cast magic spells at them from above. So that, like by the time that they got to me, the encounter was almost over because I'd done so much damage from above, which is just, that's something that like is really common in a lot of shooters, but not something I see in a lot of like, tactical turn-based RPGs.
Mm-hmm. So what is this? High. The graphics are super high res, and
the graphics were only okay when they said most of the graphics were not final, so they're working on that. But like it just was like deeply fiddly from a fifth ed standpoint. Like you had your cleric could like cast light to like light up a dark room, but then also had like a bunch of combat cantrips, and like you could take a short rest to like recover some of your powers after a fight. So it really, really felt like playing fifth ed, but in a digital form. And then there was also very narrative focused. So like each of my characters had different personalities and had different things that they kind of like wanted to get out of interaction. So like at one point we were talking to some people that were giving us a quest, and they're like, we'll give you food. And so, one of the people was like, you don't need to give us food. It's fine. And someone else was like, yeah, you better give us food. And so you had to kind of choose which one of those characters you wanted to like take the lead in that interaction, and then specifically which like D&D social skill they were using, whether it was bluff or intimidate or diplomacy.
Oh, cool. Now, do we know if you get to roll up your own character when
Yeah,
this
you're going to get to
begins, or?
design your own characters based on like the open source classes and races. It was all locked in for the demo, but it's supposed to be very customizable.
Okay, and so this is coming to Kickstarter some point in the future, but they just wanted to show off their early version of this to get people excited.
Yep, show off their prototype and build some buzz.
All right, very, very cool. And then you've got one more Bargain Quest. That's not like a bargain bin game, right? That's the actual name of the game.
So that was a fun game that was released by Renegade at the con, which I liked. Again, it's one of those games where I just really like the flavor of it. Basically, you're playing shopkeepers in a fantasy world, and you're trying to sell gear to adventurers. And so it's, again, a card drafting game.
Yeah.
Every turn you get to, pass around some number of cards, and then you have a little shop, and you choose one card that you put in your display, and that is going to determine what adventurers show up at your store. And so if you put like a holy symbol in your display, then a cleric is likely to show up at your store, but a wizard won't. Whereas if you put like a bag of holding in your display, like anyone could show up there because that's just a miscellaneously useful item. And then once they show up, you sell them gear and then send them off to go fight monsters.
So wait a minute. This sounds an awful lot like Boss Monster.
It's a little like that, but I honestly found it a lot more enjoyable than Boss Monster because I honestly I was not wild about Boss Monster. I found it to be like very, very imbalanced, where I felt like this was everyone kind of like started off from a good standing point, because it's all fundamentally like no one had different abilities in this one. Yeah. Everyone's drawing from the same pool, whereas I felt like the bosses in Boss Monster were pretty imbalanced.
Right. Yeah, no, but I just kind of that mechanic of you build it and you're trying to lure, the adventurers to your shop, and then you go and send them off to see, I guess, how well they do.
Exactly.
With
so
the
you
gear
score
that you
points
equip them
if
with.
they damage the monster, and another point if they survive the monster. And then they come back with like more treasure from fighting the monster, which then you're going to try to lure them back to your store.
Ah, neat. Now that does sound like a fun game. And what is this? It's really Bargain neat. Quest. This is a physical card game. Mm-hmm. And what do we know about shipping and price and where I can buy it and all that stuff?
I know it is currently sold out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it's sold out at the con, and I'm not sure exactly what the MSRP is on that. Let me see if I can figure it out.
All right, I'll look it up pretty cool. But it sounds like, it looks like, oh my goodness. Kickstarter, it says $119. That can't be right.
No, that's definitely not right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll look for that and see what. Let's see. Pre-order here is what it says from their website.
It's $40.
$40. That's not bad. Yeah. It's like a pretty good sized game that's going to keep you entertained for a while.
And it plays up to 6 players, which is nice because like having a bigger group game is always fun.
It looks like it's coming out in August, so it's coming out, now apparently because you can get
it was
it
released
at
at
the show.
GenCon, but if you weren't there, you can order it now.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds really cool. I like the art on this. It looks really cool art.
Oh, the art is adorable. Because like there's also like lots of every adventurer has like different special abilities, and like so some like there's one that's like a little kid who has like all this potential but like needs to be really protected, and there's like you can see it on the cover. There's like a cat who like most of the time when you sell an adventurer gear it goes away after the adventure, but there's a magical cat that becomes someone's familiar. It sticks around with them forever.
Okay, now wow. I don't know if they just had a limited number of copies available after their Kickstarter, but Bargain Quest base game, $40. Then they also have 5 expansions, mini expansions.
Wow.
That are between $5 and $10 a piece. They have the 8-Bit Theater, the Acquisitions Inc. Version.
Oh,
they
wow.
also have a Chaotic Good, a solo mode, and a Table Titans version. Then they also have Bargain Quest, the Black Market expansion, $20 there, also all sold out at their website. So apparently people just love this thing and snatched up as many copies as they can. So good luck trying to get that. Maybe that's where the $119 came from. Somebody's trying to sell theirs online already to get the buzz on this. But yeah, I think this might be an interesting game to check out. Wow, thanks for bringing that one to our attention. That's from Renegade Game Studios.
Yeah, no problem. It's a smaller game, but I really enjoyed it.
Very cool. Anything else that you saw at the show that you wanted to bring up?
Just another kind of small game that's random but I enjoyed was called Bahamas. It's by Matago, and it's a social deduction, again, light game, which again has, I thought, pretty fun flavor, which is you're master thieves and you've just pulled off a huge heist and you're on a plane flying away and the plane's going down and there are not enough parachutes.
Oh, no.
So basically all the different players have some number of items/action cards, and those can include parachutes and all sorts of other things. And then they also have money. And the goal of the game is to survive and have the most money. And so everyone's like stealing cards from each other and like collecting cards, trying to find the parachutes and collect money. But then, of course, if you are just focusing on money, everyone's going to be like, oh, that person probably has a parachute, as opposed to if you're trying to grab for the parachute, like your money might be safer, but you're not even if you do survive, you might lose because you won't have enough money. So it's fast, it's funny, it's very aggressive, just like a good, easy party game that I enjoyed.
Very, very nice. Well, that's cool. It sounds like you had a fun time at the GenCon 2019.
Oh, yeah.
And as we wrap up the show this week, again, thanks for being on the show, but where can people find you?
They can find me at escapistmagazine.com. They can also sometimes find me at theverge.com, and they can find me on Twitter at Samantha Nelson1.
All right, there you go. And listeners, thank you so much for checking us out this week. Don't forget our social media, Major Spoilers. And if you want to go check out our Munchkin Land games, you can find a lot of those video game playthroughs over at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Major Spoilers Video. And of course, check out our Twitch channel when we're doing some live streaming of games, including that Red Dead Redemption 2 that I talked about over at twitch.tv/Major Spoilers. We'll be back next week with an actual gameplay. But until then, here's hoping.
Nice. Different outro.
Yeah, there we go. Until then, remember, it's not cheating if you don't get caught.
This podcast is copyright 2019 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.